I was speaking with a quantum physicist named Nicholas Gisin. He's an intuitionist, and he suggested that intuitionist logic is intrinsically tied to time. Why? Because something remains undefined until a certain time. So the classic example is, will it rain tomorrow? Well, it's not truthful, it's not false, but it's undetermined until it's tomorrow, at which point it then becomes true or false. Okay. Paraconsistent logic. Does that have anything to do with time?
Look, it's true that on most understandings of intuitionistic mathematics, things can achieve a truth value they didn't have before because you've got a new proof. That's absolutely right. But you can have that in different other non-classical logics as well. I mean, the example you're using about future contingents, they're called, is usually taken to validate not intuitionistic logic, but a three-valued non-intuitionistic logic. Okay. So this thing about time is not that your person was pointing to is true, but it's not specific to intuitionistic logic. Okay, it works in a number of other logics as well. Whereas if you're a classical logic, you're not going to accept either of those, because even if you don't know what's going to happen in the future, it's either true or it ain't now. Okay.
So now the question is, what's interesting is, look, some logics have some metaphysical implications with regard to time.
Yeah.
Now, does paraconsistence have something similar?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not just with time, maybe it's with something else. Could be space, could be something else.
Well, look, time is a tricky subject. And a number of problems to do with time are highly contentious. Not the stuff you do in relativity theory. That's pretty standard, but there's lots more to time than just special relativity or general relativity. I mean, there's the sort of phenomenology of time. There's the flow of time. There's all kinds of problems with time which aren't addressed by special relativity. And some of those problems maybe can be addressed with a paraconsistent logic. It's going to be contentious, but there are some problems about time, philosophical problems about time, which are contentious. Now, look, let me give you one example. Think of the flow of time. Naively, we all think that, there's stuff now, and then it goes into the past, and then new stuff happens. And, this is sort of partly to do with the open future that you were describing. But time seems to flow in some sense, Things start off as the future, become present, then become past. This is usually called the flow of time. There's no such thing as special relativity, but certainly that's the way that time appears to us. It's part of our phenomenology of time. Now, how do you account for that? Okay, as I say, there's no consensus on this, but the flow of time certainly does seem to lead you into contradictions. Some very famous ones, in fact. One is one suggested by a Scottish philosopher, MacTaggart, at the beginning of the 20th century. And MacTaggart argued that flow of time is real, and that means that time is contradictory because nothing can be past, present, and future, but everything is past, present, and future. Okay, now there are various ways of replying to this, and MacTaggart had various counter-replies and so on, but we don't go into that. We don't need to go into that here. All I'm pointing out is a number of people have thought that aspects of the nature of time generate contradictions.
Some people think that the government has cracked anti-gravity. It's just not made public. I don't know if this has occurred, but something that I do know has been discovered is called MOSH.
Mosh is a venture by Maria Shriver and Patrick Schwarzenegger, which is at the forefront of blending nutrition with a mission to foster brain health awareness. They have 6 mouth-watering flavors, which gives a taste for just about every palate, plus a selection of plant-based options for those preferring vegan nutrition. I've personally found the chocolate sea salt flavor to be a delightful addition to my day, especially after working out. In fact, here's me biting into Mosh for the first time.
How's the flavor?
It's great. If you want to fuel your brain and your body, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Head to moshlife.com/TOE to save 20% off, plus free shipping on either the Best Sellers trial pack or the new plant-based trial pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on either the Best Sellers or the plant-based trial pack at moshlife.com/toe. Thank you, Mosh, for sponsoring this video.
A number of people have thought that aspects of the nature of time generate contradictions. Now, you might disagree with the arguments, of course. But if you think those arguments are right, and you don't think that time is illusory, and so you just throw up your hands in horror, then if time is contradictory, when we reason about time, we're going to need a paraconsistent logic. So it could well be that various aspects of time will require a paraconsistent logic if you're going to reason about them sensibly. I mean, this is very contentious, but everything about this area of time, once you get beyond special relativity, is contentious, I'm afraid.
So the tricky part here is that often in philosophy, you find that some statement is contradictory or some concept is contradictory. And that leads you to investigate it further and find that you were using ambiguous terms or you need to explicate further. You get the idea. And it leads you to some further insight. The issue with paraconsistence that I'm sure you've thought of is that if we're going to accept contradictions, then how do we know we're not prematurely accepting a contradiction?
How do you know how do you ever know you're not accepting something prematurely? Look, our views all change all the time. Okay, they can always, we can always find out we're wrong. That's a hard fact of, adult life. But sometimes when you've got a theory and it generates a contradiction, then you want to change the theory, and that's the right thing to do. Sometimes it may not be. So, look, when you apply, when we're doing most things of any substance, physics, philosophy, moral philosophy, history, politics, we're dealing with things about which we have to theorize. And there are different theories. There's virtually no theoretical enterprise in which there aren't, or at least haven't been, competing theories. Now, if you subscribe to classical logic, if your theory turns out to be inconsistent, you say, hey, it's wrong. We've got to look for a consistent theory, right? If you're a paraconsistent logic and you get to an inconsistent theory, you can say the same. Maybe there's something wrong, and let's look for another theory. But something you might say is, well, maybe the phenomenon we're dealing with really is inconsistent. So it puts another possibility onto the table. So you're not losing anything, you're gaining extra possibilities. So you already had a bunch of different theories to choose from. Some have now gone because you've written them off a priori. But you're still going to have a bunch of theories. Some of them are consistent, some of them are inconsistent, and you choose the best theory. Okay, how do you choose the best theory? Well, that's a sort of standard problem in the philosophy of science. You choose the theory which answers best to the data, which is simplest, most unifying. These are standard criteria from the philosophy of science. And sometimes it may well be that the inconsistent theory fares badly than some of the consistent theories. Maybe that's often going to be the case, but maybe it's not. So, just come back to the liar paradox. We've been constructing theories, most of which have been consistent, for 2,500 years. None of them seems to work, at least if consensus is a mark of working. So now we've got another possibility on the table. The theory of truth is inconsistent. Let's compare that theory with all the other theories and see which fares best.
When talking about paradoxes, something I wondered is paradox exclusively a property of self-referential systems. So the liar's paradox is self-referential. But then you just outlined the McTaggart time paradox. So that doesn't seem to be referring to itself,
no, look,
is it?
Philosophers disagree about this. Some philosophers have argued that all dialetheas, all true contradictions, were generated by self-reference. So there's an American logician, J.C. Beale, who argued this at one time. I'm laughing because he's recently changed his mind, and he now thinks that's false, and he thinks that God can be inconsistent too. Okay, I'm not going to go down that path. But, at least 30 years ago or 20 years ago, that was his view, that all dialetheas were generated by self-reference. But I've never held that this is the case. Maybe the paradox of self-reference is the most striking, but I think there are other very plausible examples. And, we've talked about motion. That's another one. And there are others that I find very plausible.
If you enjoyed that clip, then the full podcast is out right now. You can click around here. Enjoy. Subscribe to Theories of Everything to get notified of upcoming podcasts, as there are new full-length podcasts every week on the topics of mathematics, physics, consciousness, free will, and AI.